If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Welcome, Renee.
Hi, Crystal.
Hi. Welcome, everybody, to True Crime Broads, Episode 2.
We are going to be covering the target list, the target numbers that is on the evidentiary search warrant. That's what we're covering today. So,
sounds good. All right.
Well, we'll just get started. Okay, so we have a list here of the target numbers that are on the probable cause, and it's a list of 9 people, but there's 10 phone numbers. And the reason for that is that Brandon Beavers, spouse of Missy, has 2 phone numbers. One's a business, one's a personal. So, because I know that was a question that a lot of people had in the past. So,
yes.
All right. So, again, we're covering the unsolved murder of Missy Bevers, who was killed on April 18th, 2016 at the Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas. So, last week we talked about kind of in the beginning what all happened, kind of the order of events, I guess you could say. Correct?
Yes.
And so this week we said we were going to talk about the target numbers and who all are behind the numbers that they had listed on the probable cause search warrant. So, all right. So Kevin Cozine is one of the target numbers on the list, and he is the spouse of Michelle Cozine, who was also on the list. And to my understanding, they were Camp Gladiator participants. I think they were in her class. Do you know any more than that, Crystal?
You know, there's been some controversy about that, but I do believe that they were at the minimum Camp Gladiator participants. There is some reason we have to believe from talking to inside sources that they were present that morning, but then we've also heard some conflicting information. But I do believe that they both participated in Camp Gladiator when they were still married.
Okay. All right. So that is why those two their names are listed on there, and their phone numbers. I guess they communicated back and forth with Missy and so forth. So that makes sense. Okay, so 2 more names and numbers that were listed on there. Of course, the numbers aren't listed, but that's what it's referring to. It's going to be Randy Beavers and Vicky Bevers. Randy Beavers was the father-in-law for Missy, the father of Brandon, and Vicky Bevers is the spouse of Randy and Brandon Beavers' stepmom. And I'm just assuming that those were because, of course, that's Missy is their daughter-in-law, and of course, typically you communicate with your father-in-law, mother-in-law type thing. That's all I know about that. Do you know any more, Crystal?
No, I don't. I think that and I'm still not clear on whether these, even after as long as we've looked at this, I've also seen conflicting information. I think at the very beginning they led us to believe these were people that Missy was in contact with in the, right before her murder. But come to find out in later publications, we saw some indications that this was just people that were in her phone, and it could have been months ago that they communicated. So I really don't know the answer to that. But to answer your question about the Beavers in particular, I agree. I just think that it was people that she had chatted with for whatever reason.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And I do remember reading that in one place that it was between, January and up to leading to her death. But then somewhere else we read that it was just people that she was in contact with in the past. So
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, kind of conflicting information that we're getting. So that's why we're kind of letting y'all know that. Okay. So the next one's going to be Wendy Houts. And to my understanding, she was just a family friend. I think that her husband or her late husband, who had passed away previous to Missy's passing, was good friends with Brandon. And so maybe they communicated, they were friends. I'm not sure, but that's pretty much all the information I know on that too. Do you know any more?
No, I totally agree with you on that. That's the extent of my knowledge as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, so the next two are going to be Terri Beavers and Brandon Beavers. Terri Beavers is obviously Missy Bevers. Some people don't know that. Her name was actually Terri Leanne Beavers, and she was either nicknamed by somebody or people just called her Missy. I don't know where that came from, but people knew her as Missy Bevers, and that's who they're referring to there. And then Brandon Beavers, of course, is Missy's husband. So, and of course, those are kind of obvious why they're there. Why they're on the target list. So I don't think we have a lot to say about that, but there are people that don't know. So
right.
I actually heard a podcast. I'm sure you've listened to a few, and I've listened to a few that number one referred to them as Bevers, and then number two they were calling Missy's husband Brandy. So
that's a good one.
that people get this stuff wrong. It's one thing if you don't hear it, but you hear it so much, I don't really understand how they get it wrong. But anyway, for anybody who's, heard something like that, his name is definitely not Brandy, it's Brandon. So
that we know.
Right. So the next two are going to be AJ Tucker and Courtney Tucker. AJ Tucker is a Camp Gladiator trainer and co-worker of Missy, and Courtney Tucker is the spouse of AJ Tucker. And to my understanding, obviously AJ Tucker's on there. I'm sure they communicated a lot, being working for the same company, talking about, because he also lives in not far from Midlothian. I'm not really sure, obviously, where he lives, but I know it's in the Ellis County area, I believe. And I'm sure that's why they communicated. I do not know why Courtney Tucker is on the list, unless, of course, she was friends with Missy, and that I don't know. Do you know any more?
No, I really don't. Well, if you're at the end of the list, I just realized. So I do have a little bit to elaborate on about AJ and Courtney.
Okay.
I had spoken to AJ Tucker, and he was extremely friendly and happy to help. And this has been obviously a nightmare for Missy's family, but there has also been some sort of additional periphery damage in this case from the rumor mill and people's lives getting ruined. I know you and I have discussed a couple people that's happened to. The Dallas Observer did an article about that. We can discuss that in a future podcast. But AJ and his wife, for some reason, have become a really active subject matter for the rumor mill, which is mostly in YouTube comments, Facebook groups, Reddit, web sleuths. The list goes on. Dallas Morning News articles, comments, that type of thing. Pretty much anything you can read online, you'll eventually hear about this couple pertaining to the Missy Bevers case. And, it usually starts off online. Well, first of all, they're on the target list. So that is kind of a legitimate reason for people to want to look into things. So, the amateur sleuthers online.
Yeah.
But one thing led to another. And this particular rumor just seemed to really get out of hand. I asked AJ, I said, can you tell me a little bit about what's going on? And if you don't mind telling us, and he said that he really does not understand why the rumors are about him and his wife. There were some really detailed rumors going around too about, his wife was in a hair salon the day that Missy was killed, and after getting her hair, depends on which version you hear, getting her hair done. And it comes on the TV screen in this, hair salon somewhere. And supposedly, we've all heard this rumor, I think, by now. Supposedly, Courtney exclaims, "Oh, I hate her. That's the woman who was having an affair with my husband." That's how the rumor goes. Well, I didn't even mention that yet. He actually mentioned that rumor to me. It had gotten back to them, I guess through social media or something. And he said that that's completely ridiculous, and it couldn't happen because his wife and Missy didn't know each other.
Oh.
Yeah, according to AJ Tucker, they've never met. So I really feel bad for this couple. It just seems like they have just been victimized by internet fodder, rumors.
Right.
As far as I can tell, that's what's happened to them. And I think it's really unfortunate. And that's just one of the many people who have been touched by the gossip on this. And, they just really don't deserve that. But anyway, I'm trying to think of what else he told me. We talked for a few minutes. He was really friendly, and he just said that they cannot understand how they got sucked into this at all, and it
Yeah.
just makes no sense to them. Oh, and here's something else interesting, because I just was kind of trying to get an understanding of, I didn't come out and ask him about how long he had known Missy, but he told me that they hadn't really known each other that long, and um, she it seems like she was helping him a little bit, kind of get started with Camp Gladiator. He didn't really say that, but it seems like we saw that she said something about that on Facebook, helping promote his classes basically that were upcoming. But here was what I learned that I thought was really interesting from AJ is that that was his very first day to teach Camp Gladiator when Missy was killed.
Wow.
And
That
I didn't realize that. I
I
mean,
didn't
did
know
you
that
know
was
that?
amazing. No, I absolutely did not.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all just assumed that he had been doing it a long time. Apparently, he had been obviously involved in working out himself and teaching others, I think self-defense classes.
Oh,
But yeah, that was his first day with Camp Gladiator. And he told me the story of how it went down. He said he was, in another part of Midlothian, same exact times, teaching classes at the exact same time as Missy's. And he said that some other person that he knows, he didn't mention his name, another person who works for Camp Gladiator came flying in there frantically toward the end of his class and said, "Did you hear it happen? Did you hear it happen? Are you okay?" And he said, "Of course I'm okay. I'm right here. What is it? What is it?" And then he told him about Missy getting murdered. And obviously it just blew his mind.
can you
And
imagine? Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
And he obviously had the first thoughts that we all did. Who would do this to her? What is going on? Um so that's it. That, he was super nice. He just seems completely baffled as to how he's so involved in this. But another thing I think, Renee, we have to realize is we did get pretty involved in these social media groups, discussion groups. And, it may be completely 100% different than what's going on with law enforcement. Law enforcement may have zero interest in the Tuckers, but
Right.
they just keep getting talked about online.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
that's
anyway,
what it is. Yeah, I
yeah,
think
I
that's
was
what
gonna,
it is. I
yeah,
think that's what led to, because in the very beginning, I do remember seeing a post or someone screenshotted a post where I would assume it was AJ Tucker had posted on Facebook, and I don't even know who thought to look and see it, that someone had drove by in a black, uh, unmarked car and collected their trash. And he wanted
yes,
to know if it had happened to anybody else in the neighborhood. And so everyone was speculating that that was because of what was being said, and that's why. So
yes,
I do
yes,
remember that happening.
yes, I do. And the speculation was that the vehicle matched that of what the FBI would drive.
Okay.
And then there was some discussion and speculation about, well, you don't need a search warrant to take trash because it's discarded and it's by the curb, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. I remember everyone talking about that. But, AJ and I didn't discuss that. So if I'm fortunate enough to get to talk to him again, I might ask him about that and just see if he would give us a little more information on that. Because you're right. We've all seen the screenshots, I think, at this point of those conversations that he was having with people on Facebook about the trash getting picked up. And then later, I think he said something to the effect of, "Never mind, I know what it is now. I can't discuss it here."
Right.
So, so yes, that's a really good point. And if I get the opportunity to speak with AJ again, I'll just ask him about that because that was pretty weird. And you never know, it might have ended up not being anything to do with law enforcement, but it kind of sounds like it was. And I think that at that very early stage of the crime, because that trash pickup by the mystery car was very early on. I think that law enforcement was literally just following up on each and every lead. And I think that somebody somewhere went to them about the Tuckers and they were just doing their due diligence there and
Yeah.
probably cleared them right away. And, you know, my understanding is that Courtney went in and was questioned and let go and AJ went with her and there was just no there basically. So
Right. Yeah, it's
But I
unfortunate.
can ask, if I'm lucky enough to talk to him again, I can ask him to elaborate on all of that and see if he'll
Yeah,
tell us
that's
a
a
little
great
more.
idea.
But yeah,
Yeah,
being the first time I talked to him, I just didn't want to hammer him too
yeah.
much with questions. And I have to be honest, a lot of those things didn't even pop in my head yet.
Yeah, no, I
So
totally understand. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. That's some good information that I didn't know, and I'm sure some of our listeners are the same. And that's something that we want to, elaborate or tell others that are listening. Don't take this stuff to true life, because it's not. I mean, it does ruin people's lives because we don't have enough information, and obviously that's not our job, is to go around accusing people or snooping around and finding that information. I mean, because you can really ruin someone's life and they're completely innocent. We don't have
right.
any information that tells us that these people did anything. We just want to give you all the facts and let you know what's going on with the case. And if that ends up helping in some way, that's great. But overall, it's the police's job to solve this murder. So
Yes, exactly. And the only time I decided it was time to reach out to people is when I realized we were sort of switching from, social media, followers to actually doing a podcast where it requires a little bit of journalism on our part. So at this point, I think that you and I are probably comfortable reaching out to people, but I would have never done that as a discussion participant. It's
oh
just out of
yeah,
line.
yeah. No,
But
I guess let me reword that then. Don't take this to, true life as far as trying to contact people and accuse them of something, but we're just,
absolutely.
we're just trying to get information and I guess basically, um, you know, stamp out some rumors that people are
Right.
just constantly going over and over and over of different people. It's not just Courtney Tucker. There's other people too, and we'll go through those as our podcasts go on. But yeah, I mean, we just want to nip it in
Yeah.
the bud and get rid of those rumors.
Right. And that's why I wanted to talk to him, was just as, you hear more one ridiculous story after another. It seems like there was another rumor about Courtney Tucker. Um, oh, I think it was that one of Missy's daughters had said that they hated each other, and that's how this all got started. When
Hmm.
MPD asked the family, is there anyone that, would have it in for Missy, which actually sounds like a legitimate believable thing that would happen. I mean, I would think anytime there's a murder, the law enforcement probably ask the family, hey, do you know of any people that was sort of like an enemy to this person? That would be the first question. But whether or not one of the daughters said that, I kind of doubt it at this point, because we've never seen any proof of that other than rumor. And they've never met. And AJ Tucker, he has no reason to lie to me. So,
Right.
you know
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't
It's
really get where all that came from, to be honest with you. There's so many rumors floating around, and it just seems right. It's kind of like, and then there was another thing. I'm sure you saw this recently in the Facebook groups, where someone had a screenshot of a Bible verse,
yes, I have seen
but
that.
but it's just a Bible verse. It's not a post. Like
Right.
everyone says that they saw that posted on Courtney Tucker's Facebook right after Missy was killed, and it had some kind of ominous sort of a message about what had happened. And it was I should have looked into this before we went live, but I forgot about this aspect of it until right now. But it was something 418, and they were saying, "See, look, it's I don't remember what book of the Bible. Do you, Renee?"
I don't. I can
Okay,
look it up
so
after the
whatever, it was
conversation.
something 418, and we'll get that. We'll pull that up. Actually, should we pull it up and put it on? I kind of don't want to put that on our Instagram since it's just a rumor. I guess we'll just inform our listeners next time at the beginning of the podcast which exact verse that was, if they're interested. But it just nobody. I mean, all these people from the beginning of this case have not been able to produce the actual screenshot, and I just find that unbelievable. So that's just another rumor as far as I'm concerned. So
Yeah, I just looked
that's
it
the
up and it doesn't really say. I mean, I think I kind of remember it, but basically the verse is there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. That's the New International Version. Um, they basically all just say that in a different way.
what
Wording in
book
a
of the
different way.
Bible was what book of the Bible is that?
It's John 4:18.
Okay, thank you. Huh.
So I don't know exactly what they were getting at. I don't even know if they, because I remember seeing a different verse, but I do remember it being 418 because they said that it was weird because it was April 18th and that it was, on
And
April 18th when she was killed. So I don't know.
and then some other people took it a step farther and said it was 4:18 in the morning.
Yes, yes,
And I just
exactly.
think that, and I get it. People have active imaginations. We'll get a little bit of information on this case, and then if you watch the people in discussion groups, it blows up into something totally different. It gets a life of its own, as people talk about it. So, I think that we have spent a lot of time in the discussion groups just because MPD has really offered very little information on this case. So it's tempting to get in those groups and look for tea leaves and look for maybe someone who has some inside information. But the majority of, if you're out there listening and you're thinking about getting into the discussion groups on this case, let's just, we just want to warn you to take it with a grain of salt. It's not a treasure trove of information like you're hoping it will be. It's a lot of
Right.
people. It's really a lot of people guessing.
It
Well,
is. Yeah.
I look at the video and I think it's a woman who was scorned. And how about recently we saw someone say, I think it's a woman with uh, menopause hormones. I mean, these are
Yes,
people just
yes.
guessing.
Yeah, yeah, it is a lot of guessing, and that was one of the problems in with the case with all the tips they got. They had to go through over 2,000 tips in this murder in the very beginning, and they said more than half, or probably even more than that. I don't know the exact number, but I know it was a lot. Were just people making suggestions. Well, my neighbor walks funny, or so and so. It wasn't actual credible information, and they had to follow up on those tips. So it took a lot of manpower and a lot of time away from actually trying to solve the case.
Yeah, and then poor Kevin Johnson had to get out there and tell people, basically, we're not. I mean, we don't really need y'all to guess. He
Yeah.
didn't say it in those words, but he said we need actual facts. I mean,
Right.
they want to hear something actually like that could be interpreted as evidence, not someone's opinion. Basically, that's the word he used. He said we're getting a lot of opinions. They even got some as far away as Australia. But there was something about the target numbers that I forgot to mention, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Um, I came across an article from May 5th, 2016, which was pretty soon after the murder, just a few weeks. And Kevin Johnson, he made some interesting quotes about the extracted data provided police with persons of interest, the target numbers. I'm reading the article right now. It's from NBC, the local affiliate, Channel 5 on the website. It says the target numbers based on the communications, which included texts, messages, videos, photos, and recovered deleted messages between them and Missy. The target numbers referred to in the search warrant include 11 phone numbers from 9 people. That's interesting because a lot of the articles say 10.
Mm.
We don't have information. Here's the part I thought I really wanted to point out. Kevin goes on to say, we don't have information that indicates the killer talked to any of the target numbers, nor do we have specific information to believe the killer video recorded the murder. I think there was rumors about that, and they wanted to dispel that. And that was said Midlothian Assistant Police Chief Kevin Johnson. Now, I just, that's more vague information from MPD, and that's, I understand and I completely respect them not wanting the public to know things that will be detrimental to the investigation. But I really have to wonder, we sat back the other day and just sort of looked at the totality of the situation and realized we don't really know anything about this murder.
Exactly.
And that's really unusual for the public not to know anything. You and I together and separately have followed, Scott Peterson case, Dolly Routier case. I mean, case after case after case. And this is the only one that I can recall, correct me if I'm wrong, where the police literally hasn't really said anything. We don't even know the cause of death.
Nope, we sure don't. And I know that there were some people in the beginning that had tried to request um, search warrant returns, 911 audio tapes, offense and incident reports, and autopsy relating to the homicide. of
Yes.
Missy Bevers, and they were denied
Yes.
by the Office of the Attorney General. So,
Hmm.
yeah, that, I
And
mean,
the autopsy is still sealed, to my
yep,
understanding. So,
yeah. I mean, and I get it because they have to preserve their evidence that they have until they have someone of interest. But it does make it hard for people, wanting to know like what is going on with this case. Is it cold or are they still
and
working it? So
and
hopefully,
what else I find interesting, Renee, about the same thing you're talking about
mhm,
is the 911 call is also sealed.
yes,
And that's kind of unusual. A lot of times that's one of the first things that's released. It leads me to believe, and I think you and I discussed this in the past, is that whoever made the 911 call must have given information about the cause of death or some piece of information that the the investigators don't want the public to know. Like, I saw her body, she had this weapon next to her, that kind
right,
of thing. So there's
yeah,
something they don't want out that they say,
right,
man, that's all I can think of. Otherwise, why not release it?
yeah. I remember and speaking of that, I remember hearing, and of course, again, we're talking about a rumor, that there were two 911 calls, but uh, in some of the paperwork or whatever you want to call it, there is it's written where it says there was one 911 call made. So I don't know if again that was something they didn't want people to know that there was two, or if there really only was one. It kind of goes back and forth. So that was
Right.
because several places
And
I've seen it say one, we received a 911 call from an individual, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't say, calls or from several or, so I don't know.
well, and they were in rapid succession too. And I don't understand that either, why they would only have one. And what you're referring to, I think, is when we saw the log of the 911 calls, and they
Yeah,
have the one person log that was there at the scene and that made the 911 call, and his name's on there, and he was a Camp Gladiator participant, but we don't have the other call logged on there, which I find really strange too.
right.
So,
Yes, we don't know if that's a rumor or what because it goes back and forth on that. We've tried to research it as much as we can, and I'm sure, just like you, I don't see anywhere that it's been consistent in saying there was either one or two. So,
right. I don't know why they wouldn't have public record on the second one, but they would on the first. That seems odd to me.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, all right. What else did we want to talk about on this episode?
I think we zipped through that search warrant a little quicker than we thought we would on the target numbers,
Mhm.
and then I zipped through the part about talking to AJ. So let's see, is there anything else we want to cover before we go? I did want to give a shout out to Tim Koval, who we started the podcast with originally back when it was called Gumshoe Stories. We just want to say hi, Tim.
Yeah,
And thank you for, all your help in getting us started. And he's the guy that initiated all this stuff at the beginning with ordering the search warrants and that December 16th, 2016 search warrant, which we'll get to on a future episode. But he was the one that sort of opened my eyes to all new ideas on this case. So we just wanted to say hello. For personal reasons, he's no longer podcasting, but that's okay. We just want to give him a shout out and thank him for kind of getting us started on this thing.
yeah, we do appreciate it. All his help. He was very helpful in many ways with our podcast that we were doing, and now. I do remember one thing that I had mentioned last episode that I would talk about, just something real quick. Remember us discussing that one of the reasons that we believe Midlothian is having a hard time with this case. Of course, they don't obviously have a lot of murders to deal with, or any at all for that matter. There were two murders listed in 2009 and 2007, and these were kind of what I would call open and shut cases, I guess. There was a woman by the name of Wendy Lane. She called police, made a 911 call to Midlothian Police Department that her roommate, friend, I'm not sure which, Randall Glasser, was assaulted by Robert Spencer. They had lived, or he had lived, Randall had lived in Waxahachie up until a week before this happened. And her friend was beaten basically to death by Robert Spencer with a baseball bat.
Mm.
So that one was kind of an open and shut case. And then there was another one in 2009. It was a murder suicide. Guadalupe Galindo, 29, of Hawkins, Texas, came to his ex-wife's house, Sheely Galindo, of Midlothian, Texas, and made his way through the front door and killed her and then killed himself. So that's why they don't have a lot of experience. And that's fortunate on one hand, because, that means that Midlothian is a safe place to live. That you don't have to worry about things like that happening often or ever. But at the same time, it makes it hard for police because they don't have any experience in that, field to be able to investigate something like this. And you know what I'm saying? You understand that they don't have a
Yeah.
lot of experience to solve this type of murder. So
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, it makes it really hard for them.
It really does. I mean, I'm not saying that they're incompetent by any stretch. It just seems like this is a lot. I mean, just even for the highest level detectives like that have solved a lot of murders, I would think this would be a difficult case.
Oh, absolutely. I agree completely. I hope that at some point we can find out from someone within the police department if if there's a new person, a new investigator working the case, the same ones are still on it, that type of thing. Because we want to know, and we're sure everybody else wants to know too.
Right. Yeah, there's been
And,
some interesting turnover lately. I was quoting earlier Kevin Johnson, assistant police chief, and he left. And I know there's conspiracy theorists out there that think that all these people left the force because of the case or some weird reason, but I just really think it's mostly a coincidence. I mean, it's possible they were frustrated that this case wasn't going anywhere, but that's just not really how it looks. There's one of the
yeah.
guys left because to go take a high profile position with NYPD, New York Police Department. So
Oh, wow.
to jump from Midlothian to New York, that's an interesting leap. And
Yeah.
he
It
was
is.
his name is Nick Selby, detective. He's also an author and speaker. So I bet you anything. I mean, this is just me speculating here. I always want to draw the difference between my opinion and what I've seen this fact. And this is just my opinion. But when NYPD came in and worked on the cell tower pings, and we haven't discussed that on the podcast yet, but that was a search warrant where they were looking for cell phone pings, obviously to try to figure out who the perpetrator was based on what cell phone numbers were pinging the tower at that time of the morning. And apparently it came up with not any good information because that was years ago, and nothing came out of it. And there was no information on it after that. So we really don't know. But anyway, long story short, NYPD assisted Midlothian PD. And I kind of guess that might be where Nick Selby started a relationship with them and was able to get a position working with them full time
Mhm.
out there. But I'm just guessing on that part. It just made sense to me.
Yeah. That makes sense though.
Yeah, and I think that I just think it's a coincidence the people that have left the force, and then there was all that talk about somebody stepping down or being demoted, and I just think that's just normal stuff. I think that that's kind of stuff happens in police departments, and whether or not I just don't think it's there's the whole other rumor mill about Midlothian PD covering this up and it being a conspiracy. And I know Renee, you and I both agree we never suspected that even for a minute.
No, no, absolutely not. I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, you can tell that they are really distraught over the fact that they haven't been able to, bring anyone to justice for this, crime. I mean, I'm sure it bothers them just as much as it bothers us. I mean, I can't imagine
Absolutely.
that wouldn't be of the utmost importance. And there's never been any kind of, issue in the past of anything like that. So I don't know why everybody would jump to that conclusion. I mean, to me, the first thing that I think of is it's hard to solve because all you have is circumstantial evidence. You don't have anything
Absolutely.
concrete, and nobody's come forward saying, "Hey, well, I heard so and so over here talking about, he killed somebody." They don't have anything even remotely close to that, so they have nothing to
Right.
go on. You can't just say, "Oh, well, it looks like my neighbor. Well, it's got to be him. Let's pull him in." You can't do that. So I mean,
Yeah,
they have
and
nothing to go on.
yeah, and I get the impression that whoever did this isn't going to be easily swayed into talking. They have gone back into society at this point. It's been almost 4 years. They've gone back into society. They're back in their went back right back into their routines in life without anybody close to them suspecting anything. I mean, they got rid of the evidence and they just went right back to work or whatever it was they were doing before and didn't really cause a ruckus. A lot of times, amateur murderers will murder someone and they just fall apart later, and they either confess or they're just acting so weird that somebody figures it out. But this person's pretty slick, whoever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate, and I'm hoping that people will, if anybody does know anything, they will come forward or they will, say something because we do need to. They do need to make some progress on this case, and I'm sure it's
Absolutely.
unsettling for the family and friends of Missy for sure.
And one thing else on that note, when I talked to AJ Tucker, this is when we were communicating in writing. This wasn't part of our phone conversation, but he wrote me, and I was reviewing my notes before we got on the podcast, and he said that MPD was hungry to find this person and arrest someone. I mean,
Yeah,
he just said they had a lot of hunger for it, so he couldn't understand. He brought it up that he doesn't think there's any kind of a conspiracy like that because he said the people I talked to there were hungry to find who did it.
right. Yeah, and and that helps to hear, things like that from somebody who actually went through questioning, just because he was so close to Missy. And what I mean by that is, I mean so close as in a coworker who worked in Camp Gladiator with her. He would be one of the first people that they would talk to. Hey, did you hear anything? Because they had just went to that Austin conference with Camp
Yes.
Gladiator. So, I'm sure he was there, she was there, and whether they even seen each other, that would still be among many others, someone to definitely talk to see, did you hear anything? Do you know anything that we can go on to, get started with who to question, that kind of thing.
Right.
That means a lot to hear that from him because he saw firsthand how they acted, how they questioned them and how long it took and that kind of thing. So,
Right, exactly. And I think you bring up an interesting point. We may want to bring this up on a future podcast, or maybe we can cover it real quick. But the fact that Missy was only home a short period of time from that Austin trip that you just referenced, before she was murdered brutally, um, you know, was the trip? I tend to think not, but my husband thinks there might be a connection. She wasn't even home probably 12 hours. Just kind of looking at her Facebook post, you can kind of tell
hmm
she got home
hmm
probably in the afternoon because she had lunch with friends in Austin. And
hmm
then she was putting dinner on the table that she posted about around 5 p.m. So she probably got home late afternoon. So, what did something transpire in Austin that would cause this horrible? I mean, was there some psycho that became? I think we even mentioned on the last podcast. Did someone become obsessed with her in Austin and follow her back? Was there something that maybe somebody here locally, which I think is more like it, if Austin's even involved, that maybe the person here just was already obsessed with her, saw her posting, pictures of her and people, and just, I don't know, did that just trigger something, or is it simply a coincidence that she was out of town and returned immediately before her death? It's
Right.
just one of the many, many questions that we don't know the
Yeah.
answer to.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to think about. I know, obviously whoever did this, they did their homework. They definitely did that. They did their homework. They knew, approximately what time she was going to get there. Um, I mean, And everybody tries to say, well, need to put your information on Facebook. Well, there's other ways to find that kind of stuff out. Just because, I mean, obviously putting it on Facebook does, put it out there for people to see and, oh, okay. But that doesn't tell them specific things like, well, what time are you going to get there? I mean, when you take the class, just because the class starts at 5 a.m. doesn't mean you get there at 4:59, So they had to know their information because, they were able to kill her and get away either quickly before, just barely before the people, other campers got there, or 10-15 minutes before the campers got there. That is really specific timing. So there's other ways of getting that information other than seeing it on Facebook, because Facebook doesn't tell you what time she's going to leave her house, what time she's going to get there and start setting up. I mean, even if you speculate, you're not going to be right. Some people may give you 15 minutes, some people may give you an hour. So, there's other ways of doing that. So I don't know that Facebook was the issue. I'm sure it contributed, but I don't think it was the complete reason this person knew when to get there.
True. And this opens up a whole new thing. Do we want to save it for the next podcast, or we want to just cover it now about the early arrivers?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We found out later, Tim actually interviewed a couple of people, if he doesn't mind us referencing his work here. He talked to some people. We tracked them down for him, and it's funny, you and I will always track down the people, and then we're like, okay, Tim, you call him.
Right.
So anyway, Tim was nice enough to do the dirty work again. And he, I'm just kidding, he enjoys it. So anyway, he talked to a couple of people, the ones that we figured out, that routinely seem to show up about 4:30 because they like to do their workouts early. Apparently to get to work early. I don't know why, but they wanted to start 30 minutes before the class, which would have been 4:30. And then they leave at 5:30. And Missy sort of just had something going with them where that worked out fine for her too. So she allowed it. Both of those people, and I'm not going to mention their names because they're at this point not on search warrants or anything. So they're not public figures, so I'm not going to mention their names. But these two participants were both supposed to be there that morning at 4:30. And it's just really eerie to me to think about what would have happened. One of them, the reason why they didn't go, she woke up, saw it was pouring down rain, and was like, I'm not going. That would have been me, right?
That would be me.
That would be all the discouragement I needed. It's like, nope,
right.
not going. But the other person was actually in the process of heading toward the church and got a flat tire, and her son had to come and help her. And by the time all that transpired, it was too late. So that just really freaks me out, thinking about how close those two people came to getting hurt or killed, or would their presence have potentially stopped this perpetrator from making a move on Missy when he realized there was 3 people there?
Absolutely. And so while we're talking about that, let's go ahead and go over the timeline again.
Okay.
Do you have it in front of you?
I do not.
I can try to get it real quick.
Yeah, I can look too. Whoever finds it first, we'll just start talking about
it. Because the time frame is just unbelievably, it's just so close. Like you said, it's just amazing.
Well, and the reason why, there's a lot. Okay, I found the Missy Bevers timeline, but I don't know if this is the one. This is the one on Scrib D, and I don't know if this is an accurate one from MPD or if this is something someone else came up with. That's the only concern.
Yeah, I see the same thing too. I'm trying.
MPD had an official one that it wasn't as long as this one, but I'm a little concerned that this one we're looking at is not the official one. It was, who knows what lunatic. I mean, I hate to be rude, but there's a lot of crazy people following this case, and want to start quoting those people. But when we talk about the timeline, we already have, and we're going to go ahead and give a hint for a future podcast when we discuss the December 2016 search warrant. But there is a vehicle seen leaving the scene of the crime by a new Camp Gladiator participant who comes in. But long story short, we're not going to cover that now because that's a whole nother discussion that we will get to. But this person narrowly missed detection, which leads me to believe that number one, they might not have done as much preparing as it appears they did. I think the fact that they got away with it and have gotten away with it so long, we're all tempted, and I am too, to think that, wow, this person really nailed down all the details. They knew exactly what they were doing. But I really think that luck also played a hand,
Yeah, I do
because
see.
not only did this person almost get caught, but they almost rolled up with those other people there.
Okay, so I found the one from Midlothian PD.
Oh, great.
The one they posted. It was on Facebook. You can look under Midlothian Police Department Texas on Facebook to find this information. It's not, you're going to have to scroll, but okay, so this is how they have it listed. Monday, April 18, 2016, 3:50 a.m. Suspect first appears on video surveillance camera at Creekside Church of Christ. Monday, April 18, 2016, 4:16 a.m. Mrs. Bevers' pickup truck is shown on video surveillance driving into the church parking lot. And Crystal made a good point on this one. Everybody's like, well, I thought the surveillance cameras weren't working. We believe it's from the inside cameras shown pulling up under the awning, and it appears on video from inside the church.
Well, and I actually got that information from a family member of Missy's. I do not have her permission to quote her. I don't think she would care, but I'm not going to do it without her permission. But I did speak to someone who got that directly from MPD, that it was the inside camera. Now, there's been a lot of people who know that church well who have argued with us and said that's not possible. There's not one there. It would have to be the one that's outside that little awning area, the awning. I don't know. I'm just going by what I was told. And they said that inside camera picked it up. The outside cameras weren't working,
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so the next one is Monday, April 18, 2016, 4:20 a.m. Miss Bevers appears on video surveillance camera walking into the church building, which again is going to be that same camera, in my opinion, that is showing her truck under the awning pull up, in the parking lot or whatever. Monday, April 18, 2016, 4:35 a.m. Participant in Camp Gladiator arrives at location. And I'm sure that's police got that from, them personally, and that's why they have it listed. Monday, April 18, 2016, 5 a.m. Now this says 911 calls received from location. And this is Midlothian Police Department, so I'm not real sure why they have it listed here as 2 and then in 1 in other places.
Yes, interesting.
The next one is 5:01 a.m. Fire department dispatched. 5:03 a.m. Initial patrol officers dispatched. 5:07 fire department, and 5:10 officers arrive at location. So, and I thought at some place they had put on here. I thought there was a 4:28, but it's not on here. So
now go ahead.
That's okay.
I was following along with you on the Scrib D one.
And
it's pretty consistent. However, you stopped at 5:07. You said that the fire department arrived. On this Scrib D one, it says at 5:10 MPD arrived.
That's correct.
Okay, you've got that too.
All right. Yeah, it says 5:07 fire department and 5:10 officers arrive at location. Okay. Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, I said that one. Okay. Yeah, so maybe they got it off of this. I don't know. But anyway, that's the timeline of how everything went down, of what we know for fact. And, so they were on a very, that is a really, okay, so if she appears at 4:20 and she's killed moments after that, the time between killing her and getting out of there before the participants arrive at location is minutes. We're talking 15 minutes, and that's if they did it instantly.
And we also have reason to believe through a lot of inside sources and looking at looking at official documents, is that the early participant was sitting in his car. He had gone to the door and tried to open it. We learned from an inside source who is actually a Camp Gladiator participant that person It was his first morning, but he had also requested to come at 4:30, just like the other two had normally done. He came to the door, couldn't figure out how to open it. Apparently, that door that they enter through has
Mhm.
like a button underneath the handle, and you have to know about it to open it up. And so when he arrived, he saw Missy's truck and he's thinking, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go in too. He gets over there, can't open the door because he didn't know about that button underneath. So he's just like, huh, so he goes back to his car and waits. So it's really, really horrible to think about. Her murder was probably going on when he was sitting in his car.
That's
Um,
so crazy to think.
or at least when he pulled up, or after he tried the door handle, or maybe during that time, or when he's sitting in his car. At some point during all that, she was in there being attacked. If just look at the timeline. It's just horrible to think that. And this, this perpetrator is probably just, the only reason I say this, I'm speculating, is just sort of the profile of a psychopath is they're kind of like thrill seekers. Maybe he was such a thrill seeker, the killer, he or she, that they kind of liked the fact that they were really close to getting caught, possibly, maybe not, but just that might have been part of the thrill, is trying to get out of there quickly before all these people show up.
That's
Um,
absolutely crazy.
but yeah,
It's,
I don't know. I can't explain it any other way. I can't even
yeah,
imagine. Why would you
no,
put yourself in that position?
yeah, exactly. That's amazing that it's just such a tight timeline. And I know a lot of people had issues with that, and I get it. I mean, I get it too. We all do. But I mean, hey, it's a fact, and they got away with it. Now, how, we don't know, but
Right.
hopefully something will come forward. It does mention on here, and we want to start mentioning this on our podcast from here on out, that if anybody has any information on this case, please call the Midlothian Police Department at 972-937-PAYS, or it's 972-937-7297. You can also call their tip line at 972-775-7624.
And
So,
they said you can also send in anonymous tips if you want to remain anonymous through Crime Stoppers.
yes, that's correct. And they do have an app that you can download on your phone, and you can send in anonymous tips that way as well. So,
Great.
that's a
That's
lot of
great information.
yeah, a lot of good ways to be able to send in information if you aren't feeling good about giving your information. You can do it that way. So,
Awesome.
all right. Anything else we want
Okay.
to talk about?
No, I think we covered even more than we expected. So I think that's great.
Mhm.
And if our listeners wouldn't mind, drop us a line on Facebook and let us know, what would you like to hear covered next. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, if there's anything you'd like for us to ask people that we may or may not interview. I'm not sure how
Right.
many people we're going to end up interviewing and how many people we're going to be able to, but we'll do our best. Is there anything you want me to ask AJ? He might be willing to talk again. So
Yeah.
if anyone has any ideas out there or anything they're concerned about or have questions about, we would love to dig into it for you. So let us know.
Absolutely. You can find us on Facebook under True Crime Broads, or Instagram under True Crime Broads as well. We are also have our podcast listed on how many different podcast
I don't
areas?
even know. I'd never even heard of most of them. We're on Spotify. I know
Spotify. Yeah.
we're on the Anchor app. We're on Spotify. I don't believe we've been uploaded to Apple yet. I heard that takes approximately 2 weeks, and we're only 1 week in. So I'm
Okay.
keeping an eye out for that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Y'all let us know what you think of our podcast. Let us know any questions you may have. And if you post any questions on our Facebook page, we will try to answer those on our next podcast if possible. So just, shoot us a message, and we look forward to hearing from y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. And thank you,
All right.
everybody, for listening to True Crime Broads. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.
Y'all have a blessed night.